Bridget, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It is such a pleasure.
I want to just dive right in. You have such an interesting story, so many layers to it, family connections, kind of mystery, intrigue.
Well, this whole story started about 3 years ago. It was 2 a.m. I was sound asleep, and my grandmother came to me. It wasn't in a dream or a premonition. She was there. Her presence, her face, her voice, and she got down and she looked at me. She said, "Write our story." And
Wow.
I sat up in the dark and I thought about what she was asking me to do. And I knew that story. It's the story about my great grandfather and how he ventured to Peru and started a whole lineage and generation and traditions. He did that because he was in search of the lost city of Incan gold. And on one fateful expedition, he never returned. I knew she wanted me to write it down to preserve. And I was sitting there in the dark and I just was thinking about everything. I am a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a professional violinist. My schedule is booked. And there were so many reasons I could have said no. But the one reason that just jumped in my mind, the foremost, was I'm a musician. I write notes and music. I don't write novels.
Yeah.
When a loved one like that looks at you and asks a very specific thing from you, you can't say no. And I wasn't going to be the one who told Catalina Kennedy no. So I did what I could only do. I got up, made a big pot of coffee, and I started writing. And the very first stuff, that was the easy stuff. That was the genealogy of it. That was like the names and the places and the stories. And as I was writing everything, I just hit that same wall that my family kept hitting the day that my great grandfather never returned. And so what happened from there was a tremendous journey of really writing the chapter that my family never got to have.
Okay. So that night when your grandmother came to you, you immediately got up and started.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, my grandmother died when I was like 16, 17 years old. I'm turning 50. So, it's been quite a while. And she was there in my room. And so no way would I have been able to.
I would love to go a little further into this because it's one thing to say, okay, someone came to me in my thoughts. I had a lucid dream. There's a connection, but you actually felt more than that. Where was she? Was she sitting at the end of your bed?
No, she was like standing right next to me, like almost looking over, like down at me. And
Was.
if she could have touched me and like woke me up, I think she would have.
I wonder if that just means something about you too, that you're straight open. Why do you think it was you?
I've been on a whirlwind of interviews over this past year, and you are not the first host to have asked me this question or even picked up on this. But apparently, talking to everyone and talking about my story and about me, I've learned something about myself that I thought everybody could do. And I didn't know only some people could do it. And it was like mysterious or something. But yeah, I have the unique ability to go really still and quiet, like no thoughts in my mind. I can center myself like that at any time. And it's when I'm really still and quiet that I hear stuff. Call it a guardian angel, call it a divine intervention, something. But I know that if I had a busy mind or was worrying a lot that day, I wouldn't be able to hear it because it's like really, really quiet. And it's only like 2 or 3 words. But this was a different experience. And that's why it woke me up so much. And that's why it struck to me. Because at this experience, I actually had a present form, right? It was my
Yeah.
grandmother, and it was her voice, not the quiet voice that I usually hear. It was her voice, very determined to tell me that I needed to write the story. So it was a very different experience.
I think that's interesting for my listeners because right now I'm focusing a lot of our conversations about that ability. I call it empowered vision, but being able to see beyond what's happening right now and having the ability to connect to something beyond yourself. And so the messages that come through in creative processes, in your case, you were just trying to sleep.
But, if you have a lot of threads weaving through your life and they all come together to a certain point, I don't know what you call that, but I feel this is what's been happening to me over the number of years, these 3 years. In this particular, I just like a flashback of a memory that just hit me about just a few weeks before she died. We took her to the ocean, and and she was sitting like on the shore, and I heard my mother crying, and so I turned around. It's like, Mom, why are you crying? And she was watching Grandma on the shore, and the water line was just like coming up to her, and like the ocean waves were just like reaching, trying to get to her, like her feet. And she kept kind of scooting back her chair, and then just kept coming, like more than like the tide range was. I mean, it was really coming for her. And she was crying, and she goes, Well, I've always been told that the ocean comes for you when it's your
Oh,
time to go, because the ocean claims and knows and holds. And I was looking how odd the waves were going, and kind of just stuck to me as a kid, but that memory came back. And and I was like, oh my gosh, like the whole seaboard moved me out of Virginia to come down. I put my flip-flops on. My husband's like, where are you going? I'm like, I have to go. I have to go out to the ocean. And he's like, why? And I was like, because my grandmother's there. And he's like, what are you talking about? So I told him the story about how the ocean was coming for her. And he's a very scientific guy. And he was like, that's not possible. And I go, I don't care if you think it's possible. I know it's possible. And I just went out there, and I got my feet into the ocean. I just stood there, just surrounded by my grandmother. And it was just an amazing experience. But it took the book, it took writing the book, it took publicizing the book so that bookstores could call me down here, right?
that's a beautiful story. It's just so much connection, so much of a loop. It's like we're so much closer to things that we don't realize how much is right beyond what we can see. It's right beyond. And you're experiencing it so directly with your grandmother.
Yes, I brought a
Right.
family together. I've written that chapter to finally close that family gap in history. So here is the story. And so when I was writing the story, my story stopped right there where my grandfather never came out. And then I just felt my
Yeah.
grandmother's presence, and she's like, keep writing. Like, Grandma, this is where everything stops. This is the end of our family. She goes, keep writing. And then it was like a movie playing out in my mind. And being able to write that final chapter and being able to bring all the family together, that's what my true family was missing. And so I thought
Mm.
I was writing a fantasy. But what I ended up writing was reclamation. I reclaimed my history for my family. I was able to write that final chapter for them, to close them, to bring happiness to the sadness that we have been facing all these years that almost became an identity for our family, that grief, right? And I was able to change that narrative to joining everybody together. And it was something I never expected that happened. A calling always knows more than you do. So yes,
Right.
my grandmother told me to write the story, but I didn't know which story she actually wanted me to write until she started nudging me into that direction, playing for me in my head that I was able to follow. And I was able to write a healing for my family that they've never had.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's very powerful. That is incredible that you were the one that she chose and that you had the ability and the determination to harness this. I don't know if you'd call it her demand.
That's her personality. I would say demand, yes.
You leveled up to it, and you're playing a role in something that happened so long ago, and you're bringing it into today. I have a question. Imagine listeners who are feeling they have family history that is painful, that has loss, that has sadness, and it's still alive inside of them. Because I couldn't agree more with what you said. I think that the family lineage doesn't end when the people are gone. It's still part of us today. We carry it in some way, shape, or form. How can someone begin to reconcile and use this power of their mind, your imagination, your subconscious? What do you refer to this as, this area where you're getting the story? And then how can people begin to try this, even in small ways?
Well, as you were saying that, the closest thing that I could recognize that we have now is like therapy. And every time you have like a grief or a pain inside of you, all the advice that you get is to speak it, right? Just start telling the stories that you're thinking. It's so easy for someone to say, but as humans, we have this block, because if something's buried deep down and it's so painful, it hurts. When we start bringing it back up, you're going to feel that pain again. And that's why we don't want to bring it back up. And for me, when I was pulling it back up, I felt that hurt when my pen stopped at that particular time, when my whole family stopped, right? The day that my grandfather never came out. But what my grandmother wanted me to do is push past the pain and go for the joy.
Yeah.
And when nobody wants to come face to face with something that they're buried or in their history, because it takes that bravery to be able to face it. But my story is not my own. In my case, it's my whole family. And I wasn't sure if my aunts and uncles or even my mother would be ready to bring that up, and face it and be ready to heal from it, right? Ready to change it into something else. So in my case, I had to tiptoe really carefully about how I wanted to tell the story, and to make sure that everybody was ready to face what happened. And so with an individual, I think coming face to face and being able to voice what was down inside of you can take many forms. Mine was storytelling, reconnecting with my family, because my grandmother, not only did she bring the back end story with her family reuniting, but when the actual act of me going back to aunts and uncles that I haven't seen in 20, 30 years. So my grandmother is very smart. She didn't just want that history part of the family to be able to move on, but she also brought the current family today back together through those stories. So when you bring it out, you could voice it in so many different ways. You could draw it. You could speak it. You could write it. You could act it. You can move through it. If it was too painful for you to speak out loud, you can move, because motion is the first thing that we were gifted when we were born. Before we let out a cry, there was movement, right? So that's going to be very, very natural. You could take a journey, a quest. You can meditate through it. So there are many ways to harness a calling or a feeling that you want to get out. And I think once you find your true path, everything will be already taken care of for you. You won't find the blocks hitting you in the way. And for me, I'm a professional violinist. I have a studio, I have a youth orchestra, everything. And I took everybody on that journey with me over the past 3 years. And everybody was so supportive.
Okay. Okay, great. And what about the idea of the storytelling and the connection of going within, like you did, tapping into this part of you? It's reminding me of the book. Did you read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert? Have you heard of it?
No. Tell me.
She says that a story comes through you. Like the story's hovering up here and it might try to come through you. And if you don't want to do it, it might try someone else. And she shares a story in the book about that happening to her, where something she was going to write it and then it was given to someone else. And they literally wrote the story that she started. They didn't even realize it was the same story. It's turning upside down the idea, I think, along the lines of what you're saying about what creativity is. And she's describing it as a channel, not I'm a creative person, so I can do this. It's no, she said, I'm open to receiving inspiration and working through that inspiration I'm receiving. Kind of like what you're saying.
That's beautiful.
Do you think that for someone who's not even going to go as deep as writing, like you have several books about your family history, just exploring that part of themselves, do you think that's something that anyone can do? And how do you suggest someone starts that?
I'm always open to anything like beliefs, everything. I like learning about different religions. I like learning about possibilities. I'm not a doubting Thomas, right? I don't doubt a lot. I think, oh, anything is possible. And I'm very centered and I'm very calm. So for me, it felt natural. It felt natural to do that. But I know even closer than friends, family, that may have already blocked off that particular path to themselves, and they're more in a mindset. I have things to do, and they're putting themselves in their own little box, right? And that box can't be able to be open. So I do believe anybody could. But I do believe that also the situation and the lifestyle that you're putting yourself in, maybe we'll have to take a new path to open that up, and maybe like meditation. And if you're a very stressed, busy person and you want to be able to connect a little bit more to yourself, maybe stuff like getting out in nature, because I'm getting into my homeopathic side of myself, but I do feel the vibrations of the earth, and it does open up a lot of pathways through you. So like barefoot in the grass, in the dirt, hug a tree, literally.
Do you mean to open up to these creative outlets, creative connections, messages?
Well, I think everything in the earth, Mother Earth, is like connected. It has a flow. It has a communication, a frequency, if you would. Okay. And so if you're disconnected from yourself, I think you're also disconnected from Earth. So I think that you need to feel those frequencies through your body. And the quickest way is take off those shoes, go hug a tree, go lay in the dirt, right? Just feel the frequencies through it. And then like everything is cycled together. So I think that your spirituality can also open up.
Okay. And then you can connect with this because it seems like what you've experienced, and it's something that other people can look at and think, maybe I could experience something like that, is possible if you're able to connect and really explore and expand and create something that even heals from a creative perspective. I think that's enormously hopeful and just really comforting.
It is hope, right? Hope is what really links us all together, what gives us the resilience to go on. And if you're wanting to do that, that hope is there, that it is possible.
So what did you learn about yourself through the process of writing?
I turn 50 like next week. And I I lived a life. I lived a very happy, full life that I thought I was restricted to, and it came from my childhood. I was a very sickly child. I had asthma. I couldn't go out and do sports. I was allergic to everything. I couldn't go outside. I was like a bubble child, and the doctors were more concerned with keeping me alive than having me read or write. And I didn't really go to school until the 5th or 6th grade. So I never saw my life as academic or writing or a scholar. But one thing that I could do in my little bubble was play violin. And it became my musical outlet to express myself. It became my best friend. It became everything, my world. And so I built my world around that. And I became a professional violinist. I became a teacher, a youth symphony conductor, and everything. That was my track, right? I never once thought I could be an author. Like that was crazy for me to think. But the calling always knows more than you. And I think my grandmother knew I could have experienced a spark of passion this far in my life, a spark of joy and interest in New Peak, because some people kind of follow the same road and they kind of get bored with their lives, the same routine, right? And that kind of deadens a lot in your soul. And to be able to have my soul reborn again into something so passionate as my writing and my storytelling was something I never expected that I would fall into. So yeah, that totally surprised me, the joy that I found in writing. And when I say this, I say it from a point of view of I like to read. I read a lot, YA books, fantasy books. And I don't know if you ever had the experience, you're reading a book and you have a character and they're starting to do something that they shouldn't do, or takes a turn, and you're screaming at the pages. Like, no, why are you doing this? Right? And you think, oh, this book could have been so much better with this ending or something. But when you're a writer, you get to write that ending that you want. You get everything that you want in that world. You could stay in that world with all your characters, with their faults and their greatness, right? And their humor and their banter. And you get to stay in that world as long as you want to, and make them do whatever it is that makes you happy. And that joy was something I never thought someone could experience or would experience, or I would. And so that was very surprising.
Well, thank you so much. You've offered so much for me to think about, and the opportunity and potential that we all have in some way to connect with something bigger and more outside of ourselves that we didn't even realize is right there. And your personal family history is fascinating. And we'll be sharing all of your links in the notes where people can click to learn more about you, to order your books. So thank you so much for being here today, Bridget.
Thank you so much for having me.